For over 5 centuries, one empire ruled the ancient world, but the story of Rome is not one of peace. It begins with the legend of twin brothers, a she-wolf, and the founding of a city that would one day dominate the Mediterranean and the world. From kings to republic, from citizen soldiers to emperors crowned in gold, Rome's story is one of constant transformation. There were golden ages of conquest and prosperity, and centuries of crisis and decline. Generals seized power as senators fell to daggers. Some emperors burned cities, while others built wonders that still stand. This is the story of Rome in under 15 minutes. Rome's legend began with Romulus, the first king who gave his name to the city after striking down his brother Remus. For centuries, Rome was ruled by kings, until Tarquin the Proud was overthrown and the Republic was born. The Republic endured for nearly 500 years until civil wars and ambition tore it apart. In 27 BCE, Augustus rose as the first emperor, ending the Republic and beginning the empire. He brought peace and prosperity, the Pax Romana. Tiberius followed, grim and suspicious. Caligula, remembered for madness. Claudius, who conquered Britain, and Nero, infamous after the Great Fire of Rome. The Julio-Claudians fell, and the year of 4 emperors passed swiftly: Galba, Otho, Vitellius, until Vespasian restored order, built the Colosseum, and founded the Flavian dynasty. Titus ruled briefly, marked by disaster at Pompeii, while Domitian ruled in fear. The 5 good emperors came next. Nerva stabilized the empire. Trajan expanded to its height. Hadrian fortified it with walls. Antonius Pius ruled in peace. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, defended its borders. But Commodus squandered it all, plunging Rome into decline. The 3rd century was chaos, dozens of emperors who rose and fell in bloody succession, until Diocletian imposed reforms and split the empire in 2. Then Constantine the Great reunited it, embraced Christianity, and founded Constantinople. Theodosius made Christianity the empire's official faith, but his heirs watched Rome itself fall to Visigoths and Vandals. Finally, in 476 AD, Romulus Augustulus, the last emperor in the West, was deposed. The Western Empire was gone, but in the East, the Byzantine emperors carried Rome's legacy for nearly 1,000 years more. Chapter 1: The Roman Kingdom and Republic. Rome's story begins not in fact, but in myth. According to legend, twin brothers Romulus and Remus, abandoned at birth and raised by a she-wolf, quarreled over where their new city should stand. Romulus struck his brother down, claimed the Palatine Hill, and gave his name to Rome. From its very birth, Rome's destiny was tied to blood, ambition, and power. The first centuries of Rome were ruled by kings. 7 monarchs, part legend, part history, laid the foundation of Roman religion, law, and society. Among them was Numa Pompilius, who had brought peace and sacred ritual, and Tarquin the Proud, whose cruelty ended the monarchy. In 509 BCE, outraged nobles rose up, overthrew kings, and vowed never again to be ruled by one man. From that moment, Rome became a republic. The Republic was a radical experiment. Power was shared between 2 consuls who ruled for only a year, checked by the Senate, an assembly of Rome's aristocrats. Offices were limited, terms were short, and ambition was balanced against fear of tyranny. Yet, this new system thrived, and Rome quickly expanded. By the 3rd century BCE, it had subdued the Italian peninsula, forging alliances and demanding loyalty from conquered peoples. But to dominate the Mediterranean, Rome had to defeat its greatest rival, Carthage. The Punic Wars stretched across the century, from Hannibal's war elephants crossing the Alps to Rome's final, merciless destruction of Carthage itself. Victory made Rome the master of the seas and the unchallenged power of the Mediterranean world. Yet success bred division. Wealth from conquest flowed into Rome, but inequality deepened. Ambitious generals used their armies for personal power, while the Senate struggled to hold control. Civil wars tore through the Republic as figures like Marius and Sulla battled for supremacy, rewriting the rules of politics with bloodshed. Then came Julius Caesar. Brilliant, charismatic, and ruthless, he conquered Gaul, crossed the Rubicon, and made himself dictator of Rome. To some, he was a savior, to others, a tyrant. In 44 BCE, senators struck him down beneath the statue of Pompey, believing they were saving the Republic. Instead, they unleashed its end. Caesar's heir, Octavian, outmaneuvered every rival from Mark Antony to Cleopatra. At the Battle of Actium, he secured his power, and in 27 BCE, he became Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. The Republic was dead, and the empire was born. Chapter 2: The Pax Romana. When Octavian took the name Augustus, he cloaked it in absolute power in the old forms of the Republic. The Senate still met, consuls were still elected, but real authority now rested with one man. Augustus was careful to present himself not as a king, but as first among equals. In truth, he had ended a century of chaos and ushered in a new order, the Principate. With Augustus came stability, prosperity, and an era that Romans would remember as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For nearly 2 centuries, Rome thrived. The Julio-Claudian dynasty ruled first. Tiberius, a reluctant successor, was followed by Caligula, who was remembered for his madness, and Nero, infamous for persecution, extravagance, and the fire that nearly destroyed Rome. His death in 68 AD left no heir, plunging the entire empire into civil war. The year of the 4 emperors saw generals march on Rome, crowns exchanged through battle rather than blood. Out of the chaos rose the Flavians, Vespasian and his sons, who restored order and built monuments like the Colosseum to proclaim Rome's might. Then came the so-called 5 good emperors: Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antonius Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. Unlike dynasties before them, they chose their heirs from merit, not birth. Under Trajan, the empire reached its greatest extent, reaching all the way from Britain to Mesopotamia. Hadrian built walls to mark its limits and strengthened defenses rather than chasing endless expansion. Public works flourished, roads, aqueducts, and cities spread Roman order to the farthest provinces. Life for many Romans during this era was marked by prosperity. Forums bustled with trade, baths and theaters brought leisure to the masses, and aqueducts carried fresh water into cities. Roman engineering, law, and culture tied together a patchwork of peoples from Spain to Syria. For citizens and subjects alike, Rome was more than an empire. It was a way of life. Yet, beneath the marble and order, challenges brewed. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, spent much of his reign at war, fending off invasions along the northern frontier. His death in 180 AD marked the end of Pax Romana. His son, Commodus, squandered his father's legacy, and with him, the golden age of Rome gave way to decline and crisis. Chapter 3: Crisis and Division. After the death of Marcus Aurelius, Rome entered an age of turmoil. His son, Commodus, was vain, erratic, and obsessed with spectacle. When he was assassinated in 192 AD, the throne was once again for sale. Literally, the Praetorian Guard auctioned the empire to the highest bidder. It was a grim omen of what was to come. The Severan dynasty brought a measure of stability, but it was built on the loyalty of soldiers rather than the Senate. Military pay soared, civil authority withered, and emperors rose and fell at the point of a sword. By the 3rd century, Rome plunged into crisis. In just 50 years, more than 24 emperors seized power, most of them killed in battle or assassinated by their own troops. At the same time, barbarian invasions, plagues, and economic collapse hammered the empire. Cities shrank, trade faltered, and the once unshakable empire seemed on the brink of ruin. It was Diocletian who tried to restore order. Recognizing that no single man could rule such vast land, he divided the empire into east and west, each governed by an Augustus with a junior Caesar beneath him. This tetrarchy was meant to provide stability and succession, and for a time, it did. Laws were reformed, armies strengthened, and frontiers secured. But division also planted the seeds of separation between the Greek East and the Latin West. From the struggle of succession rose Constantine the Great. Through civil wars and decisive battles, most famously at the Milvian Bridge in 312 AD, he seized sole control of the empire. Before that battle, Constantine claimed to have seen a vision, a cross in the sky, with the words, "In this sign, conquer." He fought under the Christian symbol and triumphed, changing Rome forever. Constantine legalized Christianity, ending centuries of persecution. What began as a minority faith now spread openly, gaining imperial favor. The old gods of Rome still lingered, but the balance of spiritual power had shifted. In 330 AD, Constantine moved the capital eastward, founding the city of Constantinople on the Bosporus. Rich, defensible, and well-positioned for trade, Constantinople would become the heart of the empire for 1,000 years. Rome had survived its crisis, but it was no longer the same. Power was drifting east, faith was transforming the culture, and the eternal city itself was beginning to fade in importance. The empire stood, but its unity was cracking. Chapter 4: The Fall of Rome. By the 4th century, Rome was no longer the unshakable giant it had once been. The empire had endured the crisis of the 3rd century, but the scars were never fully healed. Wealth, manpower, and prestige shifted towards Constantinople, while the western half became hollowed out, drained by corruption, shrinking tax revenues, and dependence on mercenaries to fight Rome's battles. At the borders, Germanic tribes pressed harder than ever. Visigoths, Vandals, Franks, and others, sometimes as allies, sometimes as invaders, but always testing the empire's defenses. In 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. Alaric and his Visigoth army marched into Italy and sacked the Eternal City. For nearly 8 centuries, Romans believed their capital would never fall. Its capture shattered that illusion and sent shockwaves across the world. Though Rome survived, the aura of invincibility was gone completely. Unfortunately for Rome, the blows kept coming. In 455, the Vandals swept in from North Africa, plundering Rome again. Provinces were stripped away one by one. Gaul, Spain, and Africa lost to barbarian kingdoms. The Senate dwindled into irrelevance, and the once proud legions became little more than fragmented warbands, loyal to gold rather than to Rome itself. By the mid-5th century, emperors in the West were emperors in name only, propped up or cast aside by powerful generals. The last of them, Romulus Augustulus, a boy placed on the throne as a puppet, was deposed in 476 by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. There was no great last stand, no grand defense, just the quiet, almost anticlimactic end of imperial rule in the West. Historians would later look back on 476 AD as the year that Rome fell. But Rome itself was not entirely gone. In the east, the empire lived on as Byzantium, ruled from Constantinople. Its emperors still called themselves Romans, its armies still marched under the eagle, and its laws, culture, and faith endured. For nearly 1,000 years after the West collapsed, the Eastern Roman Empire carried the torch of Rome forward. Rome fell more than 1,500 years ago. Its emperors are gone, its legions long vanished, but the empire itself never truly disappeared. The laws of Rome became the foundation of Western justice. Its language, Latin, gave birth to the tongues of half of the world. Its arches, domes, and aqueducts still stand, defying time. And its idea that people can be bound together by law, citizenship, and identity still shapes our world today. The Western Empire of Rome ended in 476 AD. The Eastern Empire endured for centuries more, and even now Rome lives on in our governments, our cities, and our culture. Rome may have fallen, but Rome never left us. This is Long History Short, your shortcut to the whole story. We want to continue to bring you stories that are worth the listen and help not only educate, but entertain a bit too. If you have any suggestions for stories that you'd like to hear, we would love to know. Leave a comment, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe.